Episode 11 story occurred in July 1098. But the early part of the story gives us a couple of flashbacks story. 26 years ago, 1072. The King of Victoria, Siege's father, is attending a party hosted by Duke Robert Cumberland, Allerdale's father. Due to the debt that the country has, the king is about to impose a new tax policy on the Member of Parliament, or the aristocracy as a whole. The Cumberlands have always been the staunchest supporter of the Aslan king. But Robert still advised the king not to be rash about this decision. Most member of the parliament is worried, and he's afraid they will act in propriety. But the king is still determined by the new policy. He believes this tax policy will save Victoria in later days. Suddenly, a guard comes in to inform the king that the Victorian symbolic blade, the sights of the kings, and Princess Alexandrina Vina Victoria has gone missing. Shifting to the garden, we see young Allerdale and her maid Ailshie. They talk about all sorts of things, but mainly about the Victorian Steam Knight. Steam Knights are Victoria's most esteemed soldiers, chosen to pilot a massive steam-powered Gundam. Only selected few are chosen. Allerdale's great-grandmother was also one of them, and she dreams to become a Steam Knight too in the future. Then Ellie goes inside where the party is being held. She heard some nobles talking about Sir Charles Lynch, the youngest ever person to be knighted as a Steam Knight. And all Steam Knights are currently deployed somewhere outside of Londinium. But the conversation switches to how they think the Cumberland love to lick the king's boot. Hearing that, Allerdale kicks the noble's leg and storm off to what seems to be a storage room. It is where the family's precious steam armor was stored, which was once used by her great-grandmother. She finds comfort in the empty armor, talking to it as if there's a soul inside. But then she hears some people coming toward the room. Ellie quickly hides inside the armor, and she can hear the conversation between the two mysterious men. To Allerdale's surprise, they're talking about an assassination attempt on the king and his heir. Hearing that, Ellie quietly reaches for the window to escape. When she climbs out, she falls straight from the second floor. But luckily she landed on something soft. It is Gawain and the other. He is carrying the recently missing sights of the kings. And there's also a girl younger than her that probably barely able to speak. It is Princess Vina on Gawain's back. Gawain then speaks to Allerdale through telepathy, saying she will meet Vina again someday. The crowd at the manor cheers for Vina, who brought back the sword. But for some reason, only Allerdale can see the lions. Inside the manor, the king revealed he planned all of this. And Gawain agreeing to take part also means it's a necessary things to do for the future. But the peace didn't last for long. 2 days later, exactly on the king's birthday, the king was hanged in a coup d'etat that was incited by the angry and greedy aristocrat. Young Vina is also the target of the assassination. Luckily a loyal guard manages to sneak her out of the palace to the secret underground tunnel, and is eventually escorted by Gawain. The story moves to the year 1094, 4 years ago. With no Aslan heir and the uncertainty of the Draco monarch, Victoria has no ruler for 2 decades. And now some dukes of Victoria see this as a chance to rise to power. One duke named Stafford is the first one to storm into Londinium with his troops. To repel the rebel forces, the Duke of Londinium, Cavendish, invited Castle Military Commission to help pacify the rebel. But both dukes got killed by each other's cannon fire. With both dukes dead, Theresis proceed with his secret plan to take over Londinium. With the Sarkaz royal court army and mercenaries joining hands, and the Steam Knights are nowhere to be seen, the Londinium defense forces are fighting a losing battle. The battle even resulted in the almost total annihilation of the Tower Knights of Victoria, leaving only Lady Isabella as the sole survivor. To avoid a bloodbath, the commander of Londinium Defense Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Littau, ordered his men to surrender and do what the Sarkaz told them to save their life. But Littau got another thing to negotiate with the Sarkaz. As a Gallic descent, he sees an opportunity to rebuild his destroyed country. He meets with Theresis, not only as a Victorian officer but also a Gaulish. He will pledge loyalty to Theresis and watch over the other dukes' movement. In return he wishes Theresis to let all the former Gallic cities back into the hands of the Gaulish descent, adding the Gaulish have suffered the same fate as the Sarkaz of Kasdal. Well, Leto clearly didn't know how much the Sarkaz have suffered compared to Gaul. Theresis and other royal court members themselves aren't fancy with this so-called Gaulish man with perfect Victorian accent, especially since Gaul was one of the countries that annihilated Kasdal. But nonetheless, Theresis uses his help to quell other dukes for the time being. And with Leto and his men switching sides, the Sarkaz completely control Londinium. And since other Grand Dukes are still busy with their own interests, for 4 years they didn't march to Londinium to retake it from the Sarkaz. But the people of Londinium won't just stand still while waiting for help to come. Some people of Londinium began to join the Self-Salvation Corps to fight the Sarkaz tyranny. One such person is Feist. 1 year ago in 1097. He's a worker who works in Highbury district munitions factory that is now under the control of the Sarkaz to make weapons for them. Feist and some other refuse to make weapons that will be used against their own. So Feist planned to sabotage the weapons materials. He will then take all the blame. And if lucky he will escape to join Self-Salvation Corps in Sudian district. But Catherine, the factory supervisor and also Feist's grandmother, heard about this plan. Catherine thinks what Feist will do is stupid. They're lucky enough to be alive and should do what they always do as a worker. Feist wonders why Catherine isn't willing to take action, as she was once a proud Victorian smith who built the steam knight armor. Catherine replied this habit of being rash is exactly what killed his father, and added if Feist leaves his post during work hour, he will be instantly promoted to customer. But Feist won't just stand and let the Sarkaz do as they wish. So he escaped from Highbury to join the corps in Sudian. Now it's the present day. We see Theresis in Londinium Palace Westhalag. He got a report that the activity from all dukes has been growing rapidly, with even Duke Windermere's troops from Lithuania border closing in. But Theresis doesn't afraid one bit. He even said everything is right on schedule. Shortly, Teresa comes in to meet him, and Theresis begin to talk about Teresa's dream she might have forgotten. She dreamt that people of other countries and races stood together and embraced the Sarkaz, and a dream where the Sarkaz fought the Northern Demon and Seaman. Theresis continues talking about the Sarkaz past that Teresa once told him. Long time ago, the Sarkaz was once known as the Tikaz, and the land of Terra once belonged only to them. But other races come in to drive them away from their homeland, destroying Sarkaz's home again and again, not letting them rebuild in fear of the Sarkaz's vengeance. Witnessing how other nations banded together to eliminate Kasdal again, 200 years ago, Theresis thinks to himself that peace is no longer an option. And for the Sarkaz and Kasdal to be strong again, is to make other countries respect them through fear. Shifting to Supreme Leader Amir's group. Amir and company are in Duke Cumberland's residence. Here Siege tells all Self-Salvation Corps under Claviger that she is the Aslan heir. Meanwhile, Claviger learned that the main Sarkaz forces led by the Naxara is returning to the city, preparing for an all-out war with the Dukes. But fighting all the Grand Dukes of Victoria is still a tremendous task. So Claviger figured the Sarkaz must have prepared a super weapon. The Doctor and Amir then explained that the Sarkaz plan to control the storm catastrophe accumulated at the top of the shard and use it against their foe, killing everyone in its range and leaving those who survive with apathy. So the team planned to hit the Sarkaz supply line to sever their operation and to make them more vulnerable when the Dukes march in. However, finding the supply line won't be an easy task. The factories in Highbury is the supply line terminus, so they might find an answer there, or look for a more concrete info, but they have to break through Londinium Defense Forces HQ. They plan to divide a team where Feist and the Doctor will go to Highbury, while the rest scout the area near the defense forces base. Ellie said she will handle the supplies, but there's something else she wants Siege and the others to help. Ellie has received the Red Dragon's key to the Mausoleum of Kings from Siege, which Rhodes Island received way back from Wei Yenwu. That belongs to Edward Artorias, Draco royal descendants, and also to Lula's father. This key will open the door to the Mausoleum, which contains the sites of kings. Ellie said the sword can cut through storm catastrophes like the one at the Shard. Some who are present think it is nothing but a myth, but Ellie assures them its significance goes beyond what anyone could imagine. Later, Ellie meets a merchant that will smuggle goods to supply the rebel operations. But with the current state of Victoria, he wanted something that has value in the long term. So Allerdale suggests trading the Cumberland's family Steam Knight armor. Knowing its high value, the merchant agrees. Knowing this, Clavicia and Ailshie didn't like how Ellie is so easy to sell the armor. But Ellie said it's just a pile of metal scrap. Knowing that the armor actually means a lot to her, Siege decided to threaten the merchant so that he won't take the armor, but can keep everything else Allerdale's agreed upon. On the other side, Amia, some Rhodes Islander and Self-Salvation Corps are scouting the streets before their operation to the Defense Force HQ. But the group got ambushed by some Sarkas and the sanguine arc bugs. Luckily Logos makes his first official appearance and save them. But he didn't stay along with Amia's group, and headed somewhere else. The story shifts to the St. Marcel School. We see Golding, the teacher of this school, who is secretly the messenger for Self-Salvation Corps, and a fellow teacher, Miss Molly. They are watching the students performing a play. But once the performance ended, they notice Letao is in the room. He said he was just here to take a look at the school that his family supported. But he actually know that Golding is working with the Corps. But since Golding is also of Gaulish descent, he warns Golding to choose the right side. And almost immediately after he left the school, numerous Sarkas soldiers begin roaming the street. Meanwhile, Molly is searching for two students that ran off somewhere. But suddenly the Damazti strikes her and she went unconscious. The Damazti tells Letao that he should have been arrested Golding. But then the Damazti decided to imitate Molly's appearance, to get close to Golding and seek information about the Self-Salvation Corps and Amia. The impersonator then goes back to the school to see Golding. Golding doesn't realize it's not Molly she's talking with, and goes to her room to rest. But later the impersonator got another visitor. It's Logos. Logos knew the woman in front of him is actually that slimy Sarkas punk, and both talks about the Sarkas action in this city. Logos is expected to test the Sarkas tyranny in Londinium. He believes it will only accelerate the Sarkas ruins, and the Sarkas should have worked to embrace the land with the others. He also said he followed Teresa because of her ideals, and it's the same reason why he now follows Amia. In reply, the Damazti questions whether that ideals can truly be achieved. Shifting to Highbury, the Doctor and Feist manages to infiltrate the factory. And the best way to know the Sarkas supply line is to literally ask Catherine. When they meet Catherine, they got scolded a little bit. But she's happy to see her grandson is doing well. However, she refused to help the Corps investigate the Sarkas supply line, fearing the risk of other workers getting involved. But out of nowhere, some Sarkas mercs come to the factory to escort Catherine and some other. Knowing something bad will happen, Catherine tells Feist and the Doctor to look for a hidden compartment on her desk. After that, Feist checks on the desk and found Catherine's note. The content tells how Feist lose his father before he was even born. 26 years ago during the crisis after the Aslan king was hanged, his father led 40 other workers to protest against the nobles for closing the factories. But none of them came back alive. Feist's mother blames Catherine for not stopping the workers and her own son, and later leaving the young Feist in Catherine's care to marry someone else. Then in the last part of the note, Catherine said she doesn't want to stand still, just like how she didn't do anything to stop her son's death. so she marks some possible locations where Sarkaz's supply depot is located, for the possibility that Feist or the other wishes for her help to stop the Sarkaz. Shortly, a worker informs Feist and the doctor that Catherine and other senior workers will be executed by the Sarkaz. Hearing this, Feist rallies the workers to stop the Sarkaz. The doctor also calls Ascalon, who has been secretly watching over, to help. Shifting to Catherine, here we know the Sarkaz wanted the senior workers to be killed, because they might have known too much. Among the mercs, there is a young female Sarkaz by the name of Paprika. Unlike the other Sarkaz, she is friendly with the workers, including Catherine. And here Catherine deduces that Paprika never killed anyone in her life. Then it's time for Catherine to be executed. But the leader of the mercs hands his crossbow to Paprika and tells her to earn her first kill by shooting Catherine. Paprika gets nervous at the sudden order, but then the workers move in to save Catherine and the others, while Ascalon takes care of the surrounding Sarkaz soldiers. Once freed, Feist tells everyone who is involved in this to join the Corps, while he and the doctor leaves with the info they receive from Catherine. Before leaving, Feist had a heartwarming conversation with his granny, telling her she has always been a hero to him. Shifting to Allerdale, she is currently attending the nobility party. But unexpectedly Leto comes in and says all Londinium nobles will soon be taken to the Sarkaz for questioning. The crowd is surprised and panics to hear this sudden news, and Ellie quickly informs the Corps and Rhodes Islander to evacuate, as Cumberland's residence will certainly no longer safe. But then a strange noble approaches her and gives her a letter from a certain duke. Then we see the rebels at the warehouse district, where they pick up the smuggled supplies from the merchant, and also some new mercenaries, with one of its members is Totter. But shortly, Siege notices someone is watching them. And she's right, a bunch of Sarkaz warriors comes in to ambush them. But luckily the Glasgow gang knows the streets better, and the group manages to escape. But Ellie got injured and her wounds must be treated immediately. So Siege and Ellie split up with the group and go to the Cumberland residence. Luckily the Sarkaz have not yet seized the manor. Inside, Siege helps bandage Ellie's wound and chats with her. Later, after Siege left the manor to regroup, Ellie goes outside and sees she has already taken the family's steam armor outside. Ellie didn't plan to bring the armor along to her safe house, I mean look at the size. But she replies Siege has worked hard to protect it from falling into the merchant, and it is also the pride of the Cumberland family. However, Ellie still doesn't want to bring it along. She then tells Ailshie about the letters she received from the mysterious Duke. It seems the mysterious Duke has control of Cumberland and pressure Ellie to do something. Ellie then goes heart to heart with Ailshie, who she considered a family. She's depressed with all the burden she has to endure ever since the king and her father's death, with the house of Cumberland slowly falling into ruin, and now under the shadow of another duke. But Ailshie said Ellie already did her best, and she will always be there for her no matter what. Afterward, Ailshie walks to the garden to enjoy the view one last time. But suddenly, the garden is engulfed in flame caused by someone's arts, killing Ailshie in an instant. The perpetrator is none other than the Sanguine. Although they were initially going to interrogate the nobles, but the Sanguine likes the sight of death better. Seeing the Sanguine cruelty, even Leto is somewhat disturbed. Back to Ellie, she desperately trying to call out Ailshie. But out of nowhere, a mysterious person approaches her. It seems the guy's an agent for our mysterious Duke. He orders Ellie to quickly regroup with the others to complete her mission. For a short time, Ellie is in disbelief knowing Ailshie and also the family steam armor is gone. But soon calm herself and promise to complete her mission. Sometime later, everyone regroups, except for Glasgow and Ellie, who heads to retrieve the Size of Kings. They are preparing to hit Londinium defense forces tomorrow, and have to do this quickly, as Theresis and more royal court members will definitely interfere. While Kelsey is currently slowing down the Naxxra and the Lich movement. On the other side of the city, we see Shining visiting the Confessarius residence. Her younger brother, who is the leader of the Confessarius, has invited Shining for dinner. Although Shining has already betrayed them by running away with Liz, who was their experiment subject. But she still comes for the invitation. There she meets the leader and Salus, a Confessarius researcher, and her relative. During dinner, Salus talks about how complex her job is to extract memories and emotion. And how different the Sarkaz king is in that context. Here we also knew Theresis and Teresa didn't come from any royal court family, and their bloodline is less pure. But what the Sarkaz king and her brother did are significant to the Sarkaz nonetheless. Salus then talks about Liz to Shining. Reminding Shining she also responsible for things that make Liz become what she is. She also said Liz would become an empty shell without the Confessarius help. The leader then talks about how they has reached a clearer conclusion about Originium to the truth of the King of Sarkaz, and said they can simply build a new subject just like Liz. Hearing that, Shining got angry. She prepares to leave and tells them to never bother her and Liz again. And the next time they meet, she expects it'll be in battle. Salus tries to make Shining stay by using force. But the leader stops her and lets Shining do what she wants, as long as she doesn't interfere with Theresis's plan. Before leaving, Shining tells him that not everything will go as he planned. And instead of referring to the leader as a brother, he calls him father instead, implying that her brother is the reincarnation of her father. Shifting to Golding, she sees the Sarkaz has been active to kill anyone who is against them. She comes to her acquaintance house, who is also working with the core, only to find him already dead. The fake Molly then comes in to help Golding back to the safe place. At some point, Rhodes Islander and the core are commencing their operation to hit the Defense Forces HQ. Before attacking, Clavisia tries to convince the soldiers to fight the Sarkaz again. But the soldiers follow their commander's orders and soon the fight broke out. The fighters need to hold out for 30 minutes until Clavisia can hack the HQ system and gain information about the Sarkaz supply line. Meanwhile, Leto is present at the HQ tower, and Ascalon moves in to assassinate him. But Manfred comes in just in time to save Leto, and the fight between two Theresis students begin. Shortly, the Sarkaz forces under the Sanguine come in. The Sanguine goes to the tower to fight Ascalon as well. But soon Amir and Logos enter the show. And Logos effectively uses his arts to prevent the Sanguine from dealing a fatal blow. Meanwhile, the situation below is not looking good. The enemies are using the new enhanced mobile artillery, along with the Confessarius Guard are now joining the battle. But Shining also joins the fight, while Feist and fellow factory workers close into the vehicle and hit their weak spot. But still they must retreat immediately, as the Naxxra forces will be here at any moment. However, when the group is about to retreat, someone is casting some kind of arts that affected Amir and all Sarkaz present. Amir then sees a vision of the past, around 200 years ago in Kazdal. She sees armed forces from various nations march toward Kazdal, and they were led by Kelsey. But then Amir falls from the tower after she got hit by the Sanguine. Luckily Caster team manages to slow her falling, and the doctor rushes in to help her. But out of nowhere, Theresis is standing right next to them. Without a single word, he swings his sword to kill Amir and the doctor. But Kelsey comes in just in time to stand in between, seriously injuring her. Theresis remarks how Kelsey is once again interfering with the Sarkaz plan. And here we know Theresis once manages to kill her. But this woman, who he called the immortal who tamed history, reborn once again beside Teresa. Luckily Shining uses her Confessarius witchcraft to distract Theresis, and the groups manage to escape via the zipline and other means. Later, Manfred approaches Theresis, telling him his ultimate plan is ready. Shifting to the Glasgow gang, Allerdale and some of her mercs. They are heading to the Mausoleum of Kings to retrieve the Empire's blade. Despite Ellie just losing Ailshi, she doesn't seem to be low-spirited one bit. At least on the outside. And Siege promised her they will make the Sarkaz leader pay. Once arrived at the door to the Mausoleum, they can see blood and sign of battles everywhere. From the sign of it, looks like the battle occurred 4 years ago. One side is clearly the Sarkaz, but it's unknown who are they fighting with. The group then enters the Mausoleum using the Red Dragon's key. Upon entering they can see the statues of Victoria Aslan and Draco kings. Among them are the statue of Frederick III, Siege's grandfather, who led Victoria during the Battle of the Four Emperors. Siege also sees an unfinished statue. It is the statue of her father. Later, the group spot hundreds if not more Sarkaz soldiers' body behind the statues. Those Sarkaz are no ordinary soldiers. They are the Royal Court and Confessarius elite soldiers. And then they finally knew who the Sarkaz fought. It was the Steam Knights. All of them fought until the very end of their life. But what is depressing is that the group realize the Steam Knights were led into this trap by someone. And the only one who can order all Steam Knights to gather at a place like this, and also have the Aslan key to open the Mausoleum door, is the Victorian Parliament. Ellie is shaken by the fact and falls to her knees. And Agda, who is a knight herself, can't hold her tears. Siege comforts her, and tells Dagda to salute the Steam Knights for the last time. After that, the group proceed deeper into the Mausoleum, to the place where the Size of Kings is being placed. Siege approaches a sword, and lifts it. Surprisingly lighter than what she imagined. But when she turns back, Allerdale points her blade at her. The mercs also point their weapons at Dagda and Siege. Ellie tells Siege to hand over the sword in a sorrowful tone. Siege deduces another duke is the one who ordered Ellie to do this. And that duke is going to use it to intimidate the other dukes. The sword won't be used for Victoria but rather for one selfish goal. So Siege tries to convince Ellie to do what is right. But out of nowhere, a steam armor rises and approaches the group. One of the Steam Knights is still alive, and it's none other than Sir Charles Lynch. But it looks like he no longer has a clear mind and begins to attack the group. The group can barely scratch the steam armor with their weapons. And the battle resulted in some statues and walls falling apart. The mercs retreat first to the outside, while Siege tries to convince the Steam Knight that they are on his side. But in his mind, his only goal is to defend the sword. Siege also convinces Allerdale to stand up and fight with her, still viewing her as a friend. Upon hearing that, Ellie is now determined to fight on Siege's side. But she chooses to sacrifice herself so Siege and Agda can escape. She uses her arts to push them out of the Mausoleum door, before the rubble falls and blocks the doorway, leaving Ellie inside with the last Steam Knight. Once outside, the group got an unexpected visit from the agents of the mysterious Duke. They are here to reclaim the sword. But the Glasgow and the mercs stand together to fight them. In the aftermath, everyone regroups at the core base. Siege wakes up, and sees everyone is here except Allerdale. Claviger approaches Siege, and tells her the core reinforcement has arrived and they can rest easy. Totter and other mercs choose to join their cause. And Horn and Misery's squad have also joined in. Claviger and her men have also managed to retrieve the Cumberland steam armor. And it's still in a pretty good condition. It's a shame Ellie's not here, she will be very delighted to see it. The group then combines the info they receive from Catherine and Defense Force HQ. With this, they can locate the Sarkaz supply line. We then see Paprika and her fellow mercs who got hit in Highbury are sent to Manfred. Manfred sees that Paprika is too young and unqualified to be a merc. So he let her go without punishment, and let her see what this war will truly mean to the Sarkaz. Back in the hideout, the doctor is seen talking to Ascalon, asking her about Kelsey and Amia's condition. The old fossil injury is serious, but Shining is here, so she will recover. While Amia is okay, but she's still sleeping. The doctor then asks Ascalon about the truth of the incident that took Theresa's life while they are still in Babel. Ascalon only said the doctor once sent her on a mission, leaving the ship without one of its best soldiers. And once she got back, Theresa has already left them, and already transferred her Sarkaz king power to Amir, who then went into a coma after all that process. And Rhodes Island ship managed to escape before Theresis' army surrounded them. As for Kelsey, she does everything she can to protect Rhodes Island, Amir, and even the doctor, as that is Theresa's final order. The doctor then asks whether Ascalon hates or trusts the doctor, to which Ascalon said only time will tell. Shortly, Amir wakes up and tells the doctor about her experience in the Defense Forces HQ. According to Amir, Theresa showed her the voices or the memories of all Sarkaz souls. They wanted to take revenge on everyone who has wronged the Sarkaz, and that includes Kelsey. Amir knew Kelsey has been helping the Sarkaz with Theresa up until now, but she indeed once wronged the Sarkaz. Amir also thinks Theresa showed her that vision 200 years ago, to make Amir understand why Theresa chose to side with the souls of the Sarkaz. And Amir said, the souls of the Sarkaz are located above Londinium. Soon their conversation is interrupted by the sound of thunder. The Sarkaz already started their plan to weaponize the storm catastrophe, with the airship seems to be its controller. The story then shifts to Bagpipe and Gentleman. They are going to Hugh's house to ask him for some information, but they see a familiar green-haired feline exiting his house from afar. It was Harmony. But they didn't meet, and then Jen and Bagpipe proceed to visit Hugh's. At a Rhodes Island branch office in South Victoria, we see Reed asking a fellow operator to send her letter to the doctor and Kelsey. She thanks for what Rhodes Island did for her, but now she has something to do regarding the Dublin and her sister, so she leaves Rhodes Island for the time being. Then we see the Duke of Wellington, and the leader of the Dublin who is also Reed's sister. Here we know her name is Iblana. And they received a report about the recent things happening in Londinium, with a confirmation that the mysterious Duke mentioned in the story is none other than the Duke of Castor. And with that, Iblana said she sees a new era for the Terran. Afterward, she will prepare her move to enter Londinium. Alright, that's the story for episode 11. Hope this helped you understand the story more. That should be all. Adios.